those of you who want to make sure you know whether we're being recorded or not, you should see a little button on my screen. It's in the upper left-hand corner that says recording. So that way you know that we really are recording. And again, this meeting will be available on the project website within a day or so if people want to rewatch it. We're going to now conduct a short poll. Co-hosts, please remember, don't touch the poll. This is another weird thing in Zoom that we who have a little more power in this software need to be sure not to use it right now. But Lindsay is going to launch some polling questions, and we're just going to ask you to give us a sense of who's here and what you think about Hollister. So hopefully everyone can see the poll right now, and you can go ahead and answer the questions. And as people answer and submit their polls, we should get some answers. There are a total of 9 official attendees, and I'm not seeing any results yet. Maybe people are still thinking about their answers. There, we've got 3. We're still waiting for 2 people to fill out their poll. We can all see how many have filled it out, but we can't see who. So I hope if you're our last person, you'll do it soon, and we'll see the results. All right, great. It looks like we've got 8 out of 8 now. We do have 1 person who's just entered the waiting room. Was Kevin here already? We had one. We were at 9, and then we dropped to 8.
It says 8 of 8 have entered, so I'm going to end the poll and display the results.
Well, we just added, Kevin just came in. Kevin, welcome. I don't know if you were here a few minutes ago, but we do have a poll up on the screen right now. I know it's a lot to dive into, but if you'd like to fill that out, you can do that this minute. We were about to close it. Can we unmute Kevin just to ask him if he'd like to do the poll or not?
I'm doing it.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you.
The poll disappeared after I unmuted myself, so I don't see it anymore.
Oh, that's strange. Okay, well, I think we're going to go ahead and close the polling then.
That's fine.
Well, you could tell us, are you a resident, business owner, community organization representative, or other?
Resident. I'm also on the planning commission.
Oh, great. Welcome. Welcome. And then on the poll results, we have people's favorite things about Hollister. 1 person said neighborhoods, 2 small town character, 2 of us said our parks, and 1 other. I'm curious who the other person was and what your favorite thing is.
That was me. It's Diana. And I grew up in Hollister, so there's just some sentimental feelings about growing up there, but there's a lot of work to do there in terms of planning and how some of the areas around Hollister actually function.
I was also a other.
Okay.
And similar situation. I grew up here, but my father was born here actually. So I have been away at various times for 30 odd years, but nonetheless returned many times in the intervening years and live here now. So the other categories are almost not oriented to somebody with that kind of background, because those are actually more pointed toward those who have moved here or come here in the last 30 years or something like that.
Right. It sounds like you love Hollister because you've always been in Hollister and it's the place you know and love.
Yes. And
Great.
some of it's for what I remember, and some of it's for what I hope can be either ameliorated or just managed well.
Great. Yeah. Good. Good. Well, thank you all for doing that. That gives us a sense of who's here, and I think it probably gives each of you a sense of who's here. Let me tell you a little bit about the meeting. I see Susan's hand raised. So Susan, did you want to speak? Go ahead.
I'm not sure. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure where my hand raise is on the screen. It's usually right down here. I couldn't find it.
We do not, that's a great question. Those of you who know Zoom know that there is sometimes a hand raising option, and we don't have that on this particular version of the meeting. So if you do want to speak, you can either send a chat message to Zoom questions or project questions, or you can do what you just did, which is to raise your hand on your camera.
Well, I did both. So I already sent 2 questions. So that means that, next thing, hello. I was another other. So I just wanted to add that. And we moved here in 2001. We're both teachers and we've recently retired. So we have loved Hollister since we moved here. We love the people. So it was hard to pick which thing I liked the best about Hollister because I love the neighborhoods. I love downtown. I love the community. So I just wanted to say that.
Great, thank you. All right, yes, Sarah?
Oh, I'm one more other. It seems like we have a lot of others in this group.
Yeah.
I am not a city resident, but my address is Hollister as a county resident. And I moved here for an agriculture-related job. And I think that's my interest in envisioning Hollister is preserving that. I'm here as an individual, but I do serve on the board of the San Benito County Agricultural Land Trust.
Great. Well, thank you for being here. And I want to say you, Sarah, and others who don't live directly in the city limits are very welcome. I mean, one of the things I think we're all aware about Hollister is that perhaps more than many cities, there's a relatively large area around the edge of the city, at least relative to the city itself, that has a fair amount of population and that has a fair amount of what people probably perceive as Hollister development that's technically not within the city limits. So one of the things I at least am wanting to do in this general plan is really think of that greater Hollister area as a single area, and that while of course the city has to look out particularly for its own things that are inside the city limits, the city does need to pay a lot of attention and really coordinate with the county about issues regarding that greater Hollister area. Anything else that anybody wants to add now? Otherwise, we're going to go into a presentation, and there will be a time for questions and answers right after the presentation as well. Shall I
would like to add, hi,
yeah.
Sorry, this is Diane again. My place and what I'm associated with, because I was an other on how I actually am interested in Hollister. So
Please.
First and foremost, I am an affordable housing developer. I work for Mid-Penn Housing. I grew up in Hollister. I was there until I left for college. I live in Santa Cruz now, but my parents live in unincorporated San Benito County, in one of those outskirt, neighborhoods. They live in Quail Hollow, but my grandfather, my uncles, they all live in Hollister. So I have a very strong tie to the area and go there once a month.
Great, thank you.
May I? This is Valerie Eglin. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I live outside of San Juan Bautista, but I'm heavily involved with a lot of the county things as a planning commissioner. And my concern is for the whole county, because Hollister is our county seat. And so much of what everyone in the county does is focused around Hollister. The regional park is right next to Hollister, behind the high school. So there's a great deal that people outside of the city limits have to contribute and should be concerned about and comment on as the general plan goes forward. Thank you.
All right, does anybody else, we've had brief introductions from a number of people. Does anybody else want to introduce themselves quickly before we move on?
I will elaborate a little bit. I'm Willis Pack. I live just outside the city limits, maybe 150 yards, as well as the sphere of influence. Hollister's been marching steadily toward us. It's on Buena Vista Road, so I live immediately after the first sharp turn, if you know where that is. And so what goes into this general plan will have a strong impact on the rest of my local residency, at least on this family property. So that's just an introduction to my
Great.
participation.
Yes, thank you. All right, with that, I think we'll go on. I wanted to move into a presentation, and I'm going to share my screen now, which is a little bit cumbersome, but bear with me. And here we go. I hope you can all see my screen at this point. And everybody, I see a few heads nodding. That's great. So this is an agenda for the rest of our day today. We were planning to do, well, let me say, I'll be doing a presentation now for a few minutes. And just to explain what is the general plan, an overview of the general plan update, and a little bit about the vision statement and the exercise we're going to do. We were going to break into small groups, but since there are only 8 participants from the public, I think it's probably more fun for everybody if we just work as a large group. Many times when we run small groups, the small groups have 8 people in them. So rather than dividing into, say, 2 groups, I think we'll just allow ourselves to work as a full group. But there will be an exercise to do as a group to talk about the vision. Then once we've had that, we'll be able to summarize and wrap up, and we should be done by about 11:30 this morning. Any questions about that agenda? Okay, great. So from here on out, what I'd like to do is give the presentation straight through, and rather than break for questions in the middle, if you have a question, maybe you can write it down on a piece of paper or something, or send it in the chat, and we'll get to your questions at the end of the presentation. So let me start by just asking this question: what is a general plan? The general plan, what the courts have called it in California, is the Constitution for Growth and Development. So it's, as you will, a blueprint that establishes the parameters for conservation, for growth and development for all the area, both within the city limits, but also even in the surrounding area that's of concern to the city. So it does look at the city's sphere of influence, it looks at the urban services area, and it even looks at a larger area called the planning area. And for that entire area, it establishes a community vision and supporting goals, policies, and actions. And it provides a consistent direction for future development so that the community can balance growth with conservation and quality of life. And at the same time, the planning process documents baseline environmental conditions so that as growth occurs, community members and planning commissioners and the city council can understand what the environmental impacts of development are likely to be into the future. The general plan is by law required to have what are called elements. Elements is kind of a fancy word for chapter. The reason that the state calls them elements is that they're actually not required to be in individual chapters. They just have to be covered as quote unquote elements of the general plan. But often general plans have a chapter for every element. In Hollister, the 7 required elements are, as you see here on the left side of the screen, are in 6 individual chapters today. There's one on land use, one on circulation, one on housing, one on natural resources and conservation, one on open space and agriculture, and then one chapter that combines 2 required elements, which are on public health and safety. So those are the 7 required elements. The City of Hollister's existing general plan, which was last updated in 2005, also has an element about community services and facilities, which is not required by law, but any general plan can include any element that the community wants. And Hollister already decided to have a community services and facilities element. And for this general plan update, we've been directed to have or consider an arts element, an economic development element, and by law, we're required to consider an environmental justice element to make sure that any parts of the community who suffer from environmental issues unjustly or unfairly will also be treated fairly as well. So that's actually a state requirement. that we'll be considering also. So those are the existing elements, the required elements, and those that we plan to do. Let me say at this juncture too, you actually have a pretty good general plan. It is 15 years old. Certain ideas in it have become out of date, either because state law has changed or because conditions have changed. But we at PlaceWorks see it as a very good foundation from which to work. And in fact, this update is not intended to be a wholesale rewriting of the existing general plan. We've already scoped that what we're really going to be doing is working with the existing general plan and editing it and modifying it to match current conditions, because we do see this current general plan as such a good foundation. So the goals of the general plan update that we're undertaking right now are the ones you see on the screen now. First and perhaps most foremost is to engage as broad a spectrum of the community as possible. I think you know that today is the first of 3 or 4 visioning workshops that we're going to be holding. So there are at least 2 more coming up identical to this one that we're going to be letting others engage in. We hope to have even bigger participation at the next ones. We will be engaging the community all across this process. We have a robust website already and we'll be using it, and we'll be having many more meetings. We see this as a way then to establish the community's vision for Hollister to the year 2040, another 20 years from now. So one of the things we're going to be talking about today, really our focus today, is what is that simple, straightforward vision? We do also understand that many people in the community want to maintain Hollister's small town agricultural character. Many of you have already spoken to that today. We know that there's a very great concern about managing growth in the community. Growth has been important to Hollister, but it also needs to be managed in a way that's consistent with community goals. I think many members of the community want to ensure high quality development. They want to support economic development. And of course, we have a legal mandate to respond to changes in state law and new general plan guidelines that have occurred in the last 15 years since the general plan was last updated. So those are our goals, and I can answer questions about them later if you like. So this project has a number of components. The biggest, of course, is the one at the top of the list where we're really focusing, which is the general plan update. But we're doing a number of other things for the city as part of this same project. Over the last 5 or so years, the state has implemented a new measure called Senate Bill 743 that changes the way that traffic impacts are assessed to go from what many are familiar with as level of service to a measure called vehicle miles traveled. Our project is going to result in the city having a new vehicle miles traveled assessment methodology, so that's in our scope. We're also doing a climate action plan to address climate change. We're doing a hazard mitigation plan to address hazards such as wildfire, erosion, steep slopes, flooding. We are doing a full environmental impact report on all of these documents together. And we are doing a municipal service review, which is the document that your local agency formation commission, also known as the LAFCO, requires before the city can annex new properties. So we're going to be updating that municipal service review as well. So it's a very comprehensive project that we've got that we're undertaking. I did mention already that we're looking at a pretty large area around the city, and this is a map of the area that we're looking at. And you can see here, and I think many of you know, that the city limit is relatively constrained and in many areas matches the sphere of influence, which is the yellow dashed line. So you have the black city limit, the yellow dashed sphere of influence. But we're looking at a much bigger area, which includes the city's urban service area, which is an area including unincorporated county lands where the city does provide urban services. And we're even looking at a larger area, which is what we call the planning area, which is an area that we've set particularly for this project. And that is the area where we and city staff believe that the city has an interest in what happens. And so the general plan will at least look at all the area within this purple dashed area line and will make policy, although that policy is of course only enforceable by the city on lands inside the city limit, but it does at least give a policy basis as how the city wants to consider what happens in this larger surrounding area that's referred to as the planning area. So we're looking at all of these geographies as we proceed. I mentioned already that we've put together robust opportunities for public involvement. We have 6 separate workshops and events, and by that I mean series. So because we're working under COVID conditions right now, every workshop will probably be held several times over to ensure greater participation. So there will be 6 times like these 3 visioning workshops. There will be 6 separate times when we do events like these. We do have ongoing online activities. We are working with the General Plan Advisory Committee, or GPAC, who will be meeting in public 10 separate times. They had their first meeting already and will be meeting again in August. We have 4 Planning Commission meetings and 4 City Council meetings. And for now, at least, all of these will be relying upon virtual technology to address the COVID-19 pandemic. We are working very strongly to outreach to diverse groups. And of course, in Hollister, that means particularly the Latino community, but other diverse peoples as well. We're working to identify community leaders to reach out to the populations that they work with. We're utilizing existing contacts from the city departments and from elected officials. We're translating all our outreach materials into Spanish and providing interpretation at meetings in Spanish as well, and structuring all the meetings and workshops to accommodate participation that's as diverse as possible. We do have a website already set up. It's at hollister2040.org. And I want to emphasize that this website is available in both English and Spanish, so people who are more comfortable working in Spanish can see the entire website and participate in Spanish. It does have background information about the general plan. It has online engagement activities, and it has a calendar of events, including the various meetings that are coming up. You can see this is actually a screenshot from a little while ago, and it shows that first General Plan Advisory Committee meeting that happened on June 4th, but the website itself has been updated since then. The website does have 4 current online activities on it, which include a comment form about the vision, a ranking exercise of what you think are the most important issues facing Hollister, and an ability to upload photos of places that you really like or that you're concerned about in Hollister, as well as a word cloud to describe Hollister in 1 word, and we're posting the results of that as they come in. So those are 4 exercises, which if you haven't done yet, I'd encourage you to do them after today's meeting. And even if you have friends who can't come to any of our workshops, please make sure they know about these components on the website and ask them to participate there. And as I said, all of this is available in both English and Spanish. Here is an overview just of the schedule and process. We're currently, of course, in the first 2 phases, which are putting together baseline conditions and understanding future trends and setting the vision. We'll be doing both of those 2 things into the fall. Once we've finished with those things, we'll be doing some policy assessments and design alternatives for individual places and individual issues that have arisen through our work on baseline conditions and visions. That will happen into early 2021. We'll be preparing the general plan itself through most of 2021, or at least the first 3 quarters or so of that, and then preparing the environmental impact report and other work products as well. Next fall, in fall of 2021, we will have a general plan produced, and that will go through a robust public review process that should culminate with the adoption of the specific plan in winter of 2022, so about 18 to 20 months from now. So you can see that it's a long process. We're at the very beginning of the process, and there'll be plenty of opportunities for you and others to be engaged in this process as we move forward. I did want to mention the General Plan Advisory Committee. I think many of you are familiar with it. It has 2 major functions, both of which are very is to serve as project ambassadors on the project to spread the word about the general plan update. Susan?
You just went like all sketchy. Your voice was in and out and out. Everybody else okay?
So do you have a good participation?
So we said that I can talk, sorry.
I'm sorry, I was just talking to Amber. She's trying to help a participant on the phone. I was telling her she got unmuted.
Okay,
yeah, you broke up there, David. You broke up there for a few seconds. So you were talking about who's participating in the GPAC committee. So, and we lost you there.
Right. Can you hear me now? You can.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. It's funny because I've taken my screen share off for a moment. I have a box on my screen that says your speaker is not working, but you can hear me still. Yeah. Okay, good. I'm going to put the screen back up and hope that things work again. Can you all see the screen and hear me? I see at least some heads nodding. Great. So do stop me again. I apologize for that. So I was saying that the General Plan Advisory Committee has these two main functions, one of which is to review our work and make recommendations about it before it's moved forward to the Planning Commission and Council. The other is to serve as project ambassadors and help us spread the word about the update and to encourage participation. So the GPAC members are doing that now. As I mentioned, they're going to have 10 meetings. They've already had one of those meetings. The next one will be in August. They're usually about 2-hour meetings, and we're publishing the materials in advance so everyone can look at them. And of course, these meetings are open to the public as well. The GPAC has a total roster of 5, but currently there are 2 vacancies. Mayor Ignacio Velasquez and Councilmember Roland Resendez are on the committee, along with Planning Commissioner David Huboy. There are slots for 1 additional Planning Commissioner and 1 at-large public member, which have not been filled yet, and we're hoping that they'll be filled, if not sooner, at least by the time of the right after the election in November. So that ends my overall presentation. Let me stop here for a few minutes to ask questions, and then we'll talk about the vision statement and about our exercise for today. Any questions on the material so far? And Carrie, I know that you've been perhaps getting questions as well. So do you have questions that have been submitted to you in writing?
I have not received any questions yet.
Okay. Does anybody want to ask a question just via the audio channel? Susan. Can we unmute Susan? She, I think, wants to ask a question.
Okay. I had a comment. I was thinking about the outreach, with the Spanish-speaking population, because of downtown, so many people are Spanish-speaking predominantly. And in other times, we probably could have used computers and had access like at the library, but that's not really available now. So I'm wondering, is there some way that we could work with the library to take computers out of there and maybe put them at Mars Hill, with supervision? I'm just throwing it out there, just so you had more people having access, because a lot of Spanish speakers do better listening to the translation than reading. So that was another thought I had.
That's a great idea. Just so you all know, we're working as much as we can with city staff and I think you know that many city staff members are also bilingual and of Latino heritage. We're doing what we can, and every idea you all have is appreciated. So that idea about the library and computers at the library is an interesting one, and we'll try that.
Okay, and I had one other comment, was about the committee members themselves. Why are there 2 members still vacant? Why are we not, what are the processes to make those, have a full 5-member committee?
The membership of the committee is created by the City Council, and I think many of you are aware that the council unfortunately lost a member recently. It's now a 4-member council, and so it would take a 3-vote majority to make a decision there, and so far at least the council has not been able to have 3 votes in favor of any particular additional appointee to the committee.
Okay, so they have to approve both.
Yes, council action is required to add any new members to the committee.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, we did just have several new folks join us, and I want to welcome you all. We are also now at a total of 12 participants. We're now at a size where I think probably we will break into 2 groups once we go into the visioning exercise. So can I just ask right now, because we are kind of on the bubble, as people sometimes say, is everyone who's here now going to be able to stay for the duration of the meeting and participate? Because if you are, then we will do the 2 groups. If we're going to lose 4 people, we will probably stay in the larger group. Is there anybody who thinks they will need to leave?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to have, looks like, and are we still, Carrie or Lindsay,
I can stay.
are we at 12 right now, or did we just lose one and we're at 11?
I will, oops.
Go ahead, Tom.
I will be leaving shortly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So it sounds to me like we'll be at most at 10. That's right on the bubble. Those of you who are staying, would you like to talk in a group of 10, or would you prefer 2 groups of 5? Does anyone care? 10. I see a 10. I see a lot of I don't care. There's a 10.
I think a 10, sure.
Okay, I think we'll stay in the large group then, unless lots more people join us suddenly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, are there any other questions before we move on to talk about the vision statement?
I have 2 questions.
Yes, go ahead.
First, I kind of missed the introduction. I didn't know how to work the volume. So could you introduce yourself and who you are and why you're doing this? And then the second question, does the general plan have any mandate or any force in the future to be followed?
Okay, well, let me take those in order. My name is David Early, as you see on the screen. I am a consultant to the city of Hollister. My firm is called PlaceWorks, and there are other PlaceWorks staff here today, in particular Carrie Stone, whose name is Project Questions. Carrie is our project manager, and Torina Wilson, who's taking Zoom questions. Lindsay, who's helping to run the whole meeting, and Ricky Pozos, who's our another staff member. All of us are from PlaceWorks. We are experts at preparation of general plans, and we work statewide on this, on how to prepare general plans and helping cities to do that. I personally am the author of a book that's published statewide called The General Plan in California, and that's used as a course book for people learning to prepare general plans. And I work with state officials as well in refining general plan law. So our job here as PlaceWorks is to help city staff and help all of you to write a general plan that really is relevant to the conditions, but also responsive to what the state requires and the sort of the state of the art in general plan preparation. Tom, in terms of your second question, yes, the general plan is a future-looking document, and in fact, that is what it is. It's a plan, and I think all of us use the word plan generally to refer to what we're going to do in the future. So the city's general plan will have a horizon year of 2040, about 20 years from now. State guidance is that you might update it every 10 years so that you're updating on a rolling basis as conditions change, but you're always looking forward 20 years, and you're projecting things like where development will occur and where it's desired, what are the areas that you want to keep in conservation, what are your plans for economic development. Those kinds of things are all very important to the process. Any other questions? All right, then I'm going to go on. I'm going to reshare my screen, and you should now see again the slideshow, and we're going to be looking at the general plan. So a general plan vision statement is a document that describes the future of the community as we would like to see it in the future. So in this case, of course, it's the future of Hollister, and the horizon year is 2040. It's a way to express shared community values. It's generally pretty broad about what we're trying to achieve, but it does relate to the topics in the general plan, which are about the physical development of the community. And it guides the preparation later of general plans, goals, and policies. It's interesting to note that the current general plan, which, as I said before, I think is a great document, it doesn't actually have a vision statement in it. Vision statement is not required by law. It's not a legal inadequacy that you don't have a vision statement. And I think the vision of the community from 2005 kind of comes through in the whole general plan in terms of maintaining small town character, maintaining the agricultural base of the city, planning for managed growth, but those terms don't come forward in a single vision statement. So one of the things we want to do with you through this process is develop that vision statement for the city of Hollister. It can be a very brief statement. They generally are quite brief. Here's an example of one from the City of Calistoga General Plan. And I will look at it with you in detail, but the first thing I want you to see is just how short it is. This is the entire vision statement. So when we talk about a vision statement, we're not talking about something terribly long. We're just talking about something that sort of tries to capture all the key things about the community. Some of you have possibly been to Calistoga. It's a tourist-oriented town with hot springs in northern Napa County. It has a very small historic core, and then it has the hot springs and resorts within it. And so this vision statement says that Calistoga will remain, because it is today, a walkable small town with a vibrant, eclectic Main Street, pedestrian-oriented neighborhoods, modestly sized homes, surrounded by wineries, vineyards, and other agricultural lands. The temperate climate, the Palisades, which are major mountains right next to the town, the Napa River and its creeks, frame the physical identity. So these physical characteristics are ones that the community wants to maintain and see, and community of Calistoga sees as the really important things that define the community. Visitors will continue to be attracted to Calistoga because Calistoga is very much a tourist community, probably less an issue in Hollister, but they will be attracted here because of the unique small town character, shops, restaurants, health spas, and surrounding natural beauties. We know that the town provides a strong sense of belonging for its residents, contains a broad array of 19th and early 20th century buildings that form a multifaceted streetscape. And so the parallel here might be, I think many of you have already mentioned today how important the downtown of Hollister is. And presumably that downtown will be something we want to talk about in our vision statement. And then we say at the end, Calistoga says we'll want to retain these qualities for future generations, provide a vibrant economy, community social structure, conserving the ecosystem in a way that supports Calistoga and that also allows residents to take pride. So that's, I think, a pretty good vision statement from a small community, actually much smaller than Hollister, quite brief, but gives a good overview of what the city is trying to attain. And I'm going to go to a second one here. This is one from the city of San Mateo that Carrie's been working on just recently. And you can see here that their vision statement is even shorter, just one sentence. And then they elected to include some values as well. And we're going to be talking about values today also. So here it just says San Mateo is a vibrant, livable, diverse, and healthy community, respects the quality of its neighborhoods, fosters a flourishing economy, committed to equity, a leader in environmental sustainability. So San Mateo decided to go very short. I like a vision statement like the Calistoga one that talks a little bit more about some of the physical characteristics, but you all may feel like some of the most important things are these issues about the economy, equity, sustainability. And then in San Mateo, at least, what they did also add were these 5 values of diversity, balance, inclusivity, prosperity, and resiliency. So I'm not going to read all of those out loud right now. These will be on the website later. But again, these 5 values give you an idea of what can be in a vision statement as well. So what happens with the vision statement? Well, once the vision statement is done, you can see from this graphic that it's going to directly lead to the goals and policies and actions that are in the general plan. Your general plan already has goals, policies, and actions. We'll be working with those. We'll be modifying them and amending them through this process over the next year or so. But the vision statement sits at the top of all of that. So the vision statement might have a single sentence of many in it that says something like residents can both live and work in Hollister. That might be part of your vision. This is just an example. So one of the goals that would be a desired outcome that would support that part of a vision would be increasing local jobs. So we might articulate that as a goal, not today, but later in the process. And then that goal of increased local jobs could be supported by both policies and actions. For example, a policy might be to add additional land use designations for commercial uses near the airport. An action would be for the city to develop a program to attract new businesses to the industrial park. We don't need to get into the details of what we mean by policies or actions at this minute, what's the difference, but you can see these combination of policies and actions are very specific directives that support that goal of increased jobs, and the goal of increased jobs is reflective of a portion of the vision. And so today what we're focusing on is the vision that becomes the foundation for all that other work on goals, policies, and actions, which we'll be doing in the future. So what are some potential issues to cover in the vision today? We have heard already some of the important things are growth management, circulation, particularly the capacity of Highway 25 and people getting in and out of town, economic development and job growth, community identity, high quality design, maintaining the downtown, maintaining agriculture, and you probably have others that you would add as well. And that's what we're going to be doing today, is to discuss with you what are the issues and what are the key parts of those issues that you would like to see.
Lost him again.
Yep.
Can't
hear you, David.
He's got a bandwidth problem.
Not enough quarters in the clock.
Yeah.
He's frozen. Let's just give him a minute to come back.
Yeah, he's got froze up. It's probably the slideshow that's eating up his bandwidth.
Yeah, if they're doing it 24 frames a second as opposed to just a static.
Yeah. Dead air.
So he said he's trying to log back in and we can proceed without him. Lindsay or Trina, do you have the presentation that you could share again so we could pick back up where we left off?
I don't have the presentation saved to on my desktop, but I can pull it up very quickly here.
Thanks. Also, pull it up.
Could I take this time to ask a question of you?
Of course, go ahead, Sarah.
I have a question about, in the general plan that we currently have and that was alluded to, sometimes there are policies and some issues say highly recommended. What is the impact of deciding to use the term policy versus general ideas and language like highly recommended?
All right. Brian or Abraham, do you want to answer that or do you want me to take a first pass?
You could take a first pass.
Okay. So I think that comes down from highly recommend is guidance, you know, so sometimes you want to have some leeway in your policy. If you say use the word shall, then that's a requirement. So that's just a policy decision that's up to the community and then the city council ultimately who adopts the general plan.
There he is.
It's actually, I'm sharing my screen right now. I can play from the slide where we left off with David.
Out of curiosity,
Carrie,
with respect to the recommended versus shall or hard rule, is it essentially the case that if somebody were to do something that is slightly deviant from the general recommendations, that it would not necessarily need review for approval, whereas any variance from the hard rules would require at least planning commission approval?
Right, so the staff will use the policy direction and their staff reports, and if you use shall, that just gives them more fodder for staff recommendation and council decision. If you have the looser requirements, you know, there's a little more leeway in decisions. And I welcome Abraham and Brian and Amber to jump in too on that answer, because you guys write these staff reports on a weekly basis.
Yeah, this is Eva. I'm a planner at the city. I can add on to that, just saying that if something says shall, then we can ask development. And I guess it's kind of separate from the level of review that's required. But if something says that it shall have that, then we can say you have to put this in. But if it says that it may, or we encourage it, then if someone doesn't put that in, we can try and ask them if they're willing to make changes, but we can't necessarily require them. And we may still have to, following our own guidelines and rules, recommend that to the council, even though they're maybe not necessarily following strictly all of the policies.
Are there any other questions?
I suppose this would qualify here since we have the time and it's not quite in the vision development side. What is there a significant determination on the part of both the city and the county to coordinate this? I know they're on different plan approval cycles, et cetera, but it would seem to be very nice if there were a degree of accommodation and cooperation.
Between the city and county, was that the question?
Yes.
Yeah. That's definitely part of this process. We, in fact, have a task where we will be coordinating with the county once we get into the policy discussion. And the county has already reached out to us. We've already had some phone calls with them. So you're right, it's an important process just because of the relationship that the city and county have, and the development that's surrounding Hollister is, you know, mostly county land that's been growing. So yes, that is definitely on our work task list. All right. Well, I think we'll just move on without our mighty leader here. Lindsay, can you go to the next slide?
Yeah.
All right, so David kind of already alluded to this, but in this large group discussion, we're gonna first talk about what values should drive future decisions. And then we'll go through and identify key issues. And I think many of you already know what these key issues are to you, like what issues you think the general plan should address in the future. And then once we go through that quick brainstorm, we're gonna come up with a vision statement for each of those key issues. And so this is your vision for Hollister in 2040. It can be like Calistoga, where you wanna maintain things, or it could be new characteristics you want the town to express. So really feel liberated and unconstrained during this conversation, and in your ideas, we want people to be visionary here. Tarina is gonna take notes of our conversation. She will share her screen so you can see that she's capturing your comments correctly. If you think that an idea you have expressed hasn't been captured correctly, just let us know and Tarina can modify what she's written, because this will be our written documentation of this conversation. And then hopefully David will be back to summarize this discussion and report on our next steps. If not, that will be me. Next slide. So these are just some guidelines. We want you to speak from your own experience, really listen to each other. If somebody has a different idea, that's okay. We just acknowledge our differences and move on. We want to hear from everybody who wants to speak, so please don't hesitate. We're all here, we're all friends. And just know that we really respect your thoughts and questions, and we value your time that you've given us today. So we will have 3 more of these workshops. They'll all be the same. So let your friends and family and colleagues know and encourage them to participate. After these meetings conclude, PlaceWorks and city staff will look at all the public input we received and formulate a vision statement that we'll ask the GPAC to review. And then that GPAC will make comments, and then the revised vision statement will go to the Planning Commission and City Council for review and ultimately adoption by the City Council. Next slide. All right, so that is the end of the presentation. Trina, do you want to share your screen?
Yes. 1 moment. It should be coming up.
Great. So yeah, so these are the questions that we have to kind of just help us brainstorm. What values should drive our decisions? What behaviors should govern our actions to achieve our vision? And also you can think of this as what values should guide city council action and staff recommendations too. So it's kind of a broad question. And so we're just really interested in your answers. So whoever wants to go first, please go ahead. And Lindsay, is everybody unmuted if they can be, or who wants to talk?
I will unmute everyone now. If you're having trouble unmuting yourself, just feel free to shoot me a message and I can also unmute you, but you should have that capability yourself.
Okay. Who wants to go first?
I'll take a shot at that. Valerie Eglin. The values, obviously, we've got community values that need to come to the fore. And I believe under the circumstances with Black Lives Matter and the concerns about equity in the community to promote a healthy environment for all, that we need to focus on achieving that through our parks and health and human resources and reevaluating our policing such that it is equitable in all communities.
Okay, Valerie. So if I was going to create a value word, I would think inclusivity and equity. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Anybody else? Diana?
Yeah, I can go next. Along those lines that Valerie just expressed, some of that has to be related to the type of housing we're building. There's a ton of single family housing in Hollister, which does not really make it for a very walkable community. We need more diversity in the type of housing that we build, whether it's apartments, condos, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes. I haven't seen a duplex built in a very long time in this region as a whole. So it would be great to have some more housing diversity. And it would also go hand in hand with, helping the people and their needs in terms of their economic. There's a lot of, my mother works with a lot of single mothers at the court in Hollister. And so we need to make sure that they are safely housed. And also along those lines, we need to make sure that we are responding to the regional housing needs assessment goals to make sure that we are housing those with lowest needs and making sure that they have access to all of these spaces, the parks, the healthcare, and all other amenities like a grocery store. The house is not very, very well walkable just because you have long stretches of just housing and nothing really in between. And so we want to be more, we want to make it more inclusive of that. And that would also entice folks to maybe start investing in our public transportation. We have a very poor public transportation in San Diego County, and we need to make it better.
Okay.
And that also includes doing bike paths and whatnot.
All right, so if I was going to distill that into 2 words, it would be diversity and accessibility, and then we can get into the key issues in the next question.
Correct.
Great.
Ari, I was typing a sentence. You said that your keywords for that were accessibility. And what was the other?
Diversity. And I think David is here by phone now, so I'm going to give him the reins.
All right. Thank you, Carrie. Can people hear me?
Yes.
All right. I apologize. It appears that internet in my house completely failed this morning. I have tried to reboot my server and absolutely nothing happened. So I apologize. I can't see any of you, but I can hear you all. And it sounds like you all have gone through at least you were in the process of talking about some key ideas. And I just got on, so I heard the last speaker, but I don't know how many of the rest of you might have gotten to do that already.
We've heard from Valerie and Diana so far.
Okay, great. How about the others of you? Would any of you like to add things?
I would.
Go ahead.
Go, Susan, go.
Oh, you sure?
Sure. I'll be next.
All right. I'm looking at the question, what values drive future decisions and key issues? So I would think open space and agriculture. I mean, people come here for the open space. And then, of course, we've got these wonderful local farms and how to help them get, I think, probably more business. Downtown is fantastic. So how do we support downtown? More biker friendly, more walk friendly. We need more space that people can feel free to walk. My major idea, of course, has been the library. If we're going to build a new library, which we are one day, we need a facility that's going to meet the needs of our community. And we have space to think about, so it's very wise for us to project ahead. Are we going to use the administration block? You know, that street is where the library is going to be. So it's downtown, anchor to the businesses here and helping with that growth. So that's sort of a few thoughts.
Okay, great. And I know that there was a second person who almost went just now, and I apologize, I can't see names, but whoever you were, go ahead.
All right, this is Robin, and I'd like to make sure that we do something with Park Hill, at the very least, have a in the plan a request to make a plan for it. It's in the heart of our downtown. It has so much potential, and it could really show our values if we did something with it. Thank you.
Robin, can I just follow up quickly and say, if you had to say, you know, one sentence or a couple words about what would that vision for Park Hill be? Would it be to create a park more? Would it be more residential development? Would it be maintaining just the visual character of the hill? What are the things you would want to see happen?
Ideally, I would like to see it converted from city property to parkland and then developed as parkland. We have a X amount of acres per people. What is it? 4 acres per 1,000 people in our plan, or recently it was adjusted, and we hit 2.2 acres per 1,000 people in town. So we really need to boost our open space, and having Park Hill as a public destination would be ideal. Not residential, not at all, and never ever.
Great. Okay, thank you. Anybody else who wants to add something on this topic?
Hi, I'm Maureen.
Hi.
Hi. I would like to add, should I go now or no?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I would like to really see just a great community center. I'm so disappointed. I know we have a little one, it's over at Dunn Park, but it's unsafe, it's not kept up. And I really think that we need a community center here in Hollister.
Okay, great.
The little towns that I grew up in, you know, had like granges and stuff like that. We don't have that either.
Mm-hmm. All right, and I think that kind of moves into the second question about key issues that the general plan should address. The first question was values, and a few of you have talked about values. And the last two comments have also been about issues, Park Hill, a community center. So why don't we broaden the question that any of you who would like to, and who haven't spoken yet, could talk both about values you'd like to see addressed, as well as key issues that the general plan should address. I'm not hearing anyone. I don't know if that's my phone or if somebody else, if any of you want to go.
It's not.
I'm waiting for Robin Pollard to speak up.
I said my piece, Val. More
Okay.
green space.
Okay. Yes.
And I'm sorry, this is David again. I wasn't at the beginning of the discussion so far, but a few issues that I think I know of that I haven't heard all of you speak about are ones I mentioned earlier before I disappeared, but I'm wondering if anybody wants to speak to the downtown, to transportation or commuting, economic development or jobs, any of those items that any of you would care to speak about?
Can you hear me? This is Tom Willarius. You know, maybe you could speak on or share your thoughts. And I see these two in conflict. One is development or growth, which I believe is limited growth. And the other one is economic growth, which would be more businesses and more people. And I see those two in conflict. And is there a way around that, or does anybody have any thoughts about that?
I think you might have addressed that question to me, but rather than me talking about that or any members of our team from the city or the consultants, I think at this juncture, what's really appropriate is to hear from other community members. But Tom, I guess I want to echo what you're saying, just that it can at times seem that there's a conflict and we need to think about how we want to resolve it. But if we both have a goal to limit growth to reasonable amounts, but we also want to think about economic development for people who already live in Hollister, what are possibly some things that we could do that would achieve both of those goals? And do others even support those two goals of, on the one hand, limiting overall growth and particularly residential growth, but simultaneously providing additional economic opportunity?
So this is Kevin, if I could jump in. Please. On the economic side, with tailgating off Tom there, I think the airport has enormous potential. I think something out there would be, we have a graveyard out there right now, and there's a lot of work to be done out there, but it has enormous potential. They've been keeping it up for a long time, and really, I would say keeping it up for just, local hobbyists, and it has a potential to be an economic center for some of these companies that could actually build their distribution centers or research and development buildings here, fly in their big wigs, and have jobs for us here, and be close to the Silicon Valley and close to the Central Valley to get down to LA, sort of thing. We're in a unique spot where we're close to both the Silicon Valley and an artery to the LA area, to where we could do some unique development to economically, for distribution centers and that sort of thing up in the north end of the city, or up in the north end of the city, I guess it would be, county / whatever it is there. There's a lot of lines around there. But, I was in the logistics business myself, and that 156, 152, 101 triangle there, you see nothing but trucks. And that's an area where it's an artery for commerce, and we're sitting in that area where we should be a distribution artery, and we could be taking advantage of that. And on top of that, we have an airport, that could take care of air freight and things like that, because we have the capacity in the runways and that sort of thing. So if we were to, invest the money in taking down some of the buildings out there, which is an issue, I know, because it's hazmat and that sort of thing. There's a lot of asbestos out there, but if we invested that money and built up that airport, we could probably do a pretty good job in economic impact out there.
Great. Okay. So, and to summarize, I know Carrie did a little of this while I was gone.
Yeah, sorry, I was a little long-winded there. Fingers are probably getting tired.
I hear you though, agreeing with the idea of managed growth, agreeing with the idea of economic development, and pointing out that the airport, and I think implicitly the adjacent industrial park, might be appropriate land supplies and have a lot of benefits to them that could make job and economic development possible up there on the northern end of the city.
In both ways, yeah. We could be taking people off the road and, providing local jobs and providing, exactly what you just said, yeah.
Anybody else want to speak to that overall question of both managing residential growth in general and also supporting economic development, and how those two things, if those two things are important, and how they might be balanced?
Yes.
I think it would be helpful. Go ahead, Valerie.
I think unless we have a robust type of inclusive housing, as Diane Alfaro was speaking earlier, to have a diversity of housing that will accommodate our future children, as well as accept the incoming group of people that want to live in this area or can find jobs in this area, or are business people. The housing and the business goes hand in hand. That economic development needs to progress at a similar rate to our housing, and our schools are over the top. They're doing great. So we can accommodate a lot of people in the area. And as Kevin was talking about the triangle that we are a crossroads, the whole San Benito County, for tourism, which is a great economic development, as well as trucking. And since the federal commerce routes, we do not have a decent truck stop here that would accommodate trucks. They park all over the county on side roads, and there just is not enough accommodation, which would be another economic possibility for the county. Huge, in fact. So I think one thing has to follow the other, but as we look at the counties outside of ourselves, looking at Santa Clara County and at Monterey County, and looking at what they are doing and come in between and pick up where their overcrowding is, and invite those industries into our airport area, as well as develop others. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, good. So Carrie is able to see all your hands and faces, which I can't see, and she informs me that Diana is next, and then Ann Hall would be after her. So Diana, do you want to go?
Yeah, I echo a lot of the sentiments that Valerie just shared. I think those are great ideas. And along the lines of what Kevin was saying, Watsonville has done a lot of that. Watsonville also has an airport. They actually created a distribution center for FedEx there. So it'd be I think they have some good models of some of the things that we would like to see here of what they've been able to accomplish there. However, it's also still a big bedroom community for a lot of workers in Santa Cruz County and beyond. And so there is a traffic issue that we still need to deal with. And even if we have those things, we're still going to have to deal with that. So I think it would be helpful to understand, who are the major employers in San Benito County, so that we can see what their growth goals are, and to really see if there really is any more potential to attract any of these large companies to come down here, like FedEx, for example, or Amazon or something. I know those would create jobs here locally, but I remember when I was looking for a job in high school, I had to go to the outlet to find a job. I actually didn't find a job at all until I was 18. So my parents love that. Yeah, so I think those are things that we need to think about as we move forward with this.
Okay, great. So then I'll next call on Anne, and then maybe we'll switch gears to our last question, and there'll still be plenty of opportunities for everybody to speak. Anne?
So I think my comments would be along the lines of Diana and Valerie, in that we are a bedroom community of San Jose. I think we really need to focus on getting more companies and jobs here. So not everyone is commuting on 25. I think attracting businesses here should be more of a priority, and trying to get people so people can work locally. And then if there is an economic downturn, we don't just get everyone, moving back up to San Jose because that's where their job is. I do think more effort or more emphasis should be placed on trying to attract business and then trying to have local jobs.
Great, thank you. So I heard a real consensus from everybody who spoke about this desire to focus on economic growth and job growth, an emphasis on logistics and trucking and the Northern Industrial Park and the airport. Sounded like there was a lot of agreement about that. And it sounded like there was a mixed kind of feeling. It sounded like everybody agreed that some management of residential growth is appropriate, but I heard a little difference, and I think this will be an issue throughout the general plan process, but the question of whether to really try and minimize residential growth on all fronts, or whether to see a little bit, some good management, and at the same time understand that we also need to accommodate particularly affordable housing, workforce housing, housing for future generations, and even housing for people who may come in and want to take some of the jobs in Hollister. So that's going to be an ongoing issue. I know Michael has his hand up. What I'd like to do is just read you the third question, which is sort of the overarching question that we've been talking about, and then maybe Michael can go first, but I'd love to hear from everyone before we have to end at 11:30. So maybe people can take about a minute each, and I'll keep track and make sure we've got everybody. But so the question is, can you just articulate in your own words, what are the key points of your vision for Hollister in 2040? What will Hollister look like in the year 2040, and what will be the most important characteristics in your mind that it will have if you've been successful at creating the community you want in 2040? Michael, can you start us off with that?
I'd actually like to head back to the economic development issue. I'm just curious. I know that the city does have, I think, at least some economic development personnel, and I think it might be useful to kind of know what sort of programs they have in place or don't have in place, and what's worked or not worked in the past, just to maybe put some context to what the vision is. So I don't know if Brian or Abraham has any issues on that, or maybe that happens later in the process, but I do think that input would be useful if they have dealt with companies in the past and could give us some feedback of what maybe some of the potential issues or incentives might be.
Yeah, and Michael, we will. You're absolutely right. The city does already have an economic development function. It's been very active in a lot of different ways. And you're also absolutely right that today's not the time to talk about that. But as we showed you at the outset that part of our other current work that's happening in parallel is to look at existing conditions and future trends. We're actually doing a full economic development market study right now that's being done through a subconsultant called DAE, Urban Economics, and that'll be available in a few months. And that will be a starting point for realizing the vision and amending city programs that are already in place for economic development. Today, we really are focusing on what that vision is. And I think we've heard from all of you that part of your vision for the future of Hollister is a more robust economy and particularly a more robust job picture so that local residents can find good employment. And that's great. Michael, do you want to add anything else in terms of your vision? And then I'll just ask who else would like to take a minute or so to finish up articulating your vision for Hollister in 2040. And Michael, I could call on you again later if you prefer.
No, that's okay. I mean, I think for full disclosure, and Brian and other people know this, I've worked as a home builder for home builders in the last decade, and so I'm interested in the general plan update, but I think the visioning is more in the purview of the residents.
Okay. All right. So who would like to start in on the last minute or so for each person to talk about your vision for Hollister in 2040?
I'll go first. So this is Diana
And
again.
can you say who you are? Because I can't see names on the phone. Sorry.
Yeah, this is Diana again.
Great.
So as my parents age and as my family ages in Hollister, I would like a more walkable community for them. You know, in 20 years, my grandfather will not be around anymore. So, you know, he needs a place where he can feel safe and walk around as much as he can before he can't anymore. My mother, my parents, you know, they are in their mid 50s and, you know, their needs are going to change as they age as well. So having access or being close enough to amenities such as the hospital and like grocery store and whatnot is very important. So accessibility is extremely important as part of this plan. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Who else?
This is Tom.
Great. Go ahead.
You know, I'd like to see a very vibrant downtown and our infrastructure brought up to today's standards. I'd like to see a very modern, state-of-the-art convention center, community center with a swimming pool and all the good stuff and vibrant parks. I guess that's what I would like to see, you know, and I'll throw this in. I've got some concerns, you know, there was development on 101, one of the nodes out there, and we've got a very vocal anti-growth group of people out here, and I'm not sure how we deal with that or get them in part of the program to go along with this. You know, right now I think that's a real stumbling block for the economic development, which we sorely need.
Great. Okay. Thank you. And that was kind of a perfect minute. I appreciate that. I think we've got 8 more people in the meeting. If you each do a minute, we'll end at about 11:35, I think, which is pretty great. So who else would like to take a minute to talk about your vision?
I would jump in. Thank you. Valerie Eglin.
Great. Hi, Valerie.
I agree with Tom Walerius, Robin, Diana, that a walkable community with plans for complete streets, to have a good circulation for transport, county transit, so that our elderly and our kids and just going to the grocery store, you can get there with public transit, and to have a lot of good bicycle pedestrian accommodation. This is extremely important, and I know in planning that it is highly recommended. The state of California and the national organizations are pushing very much toward this kind of activity. And for health, our parks are very important, and the ability to not only take care of the health of our community, but to encourage tourism, and that being a small business opportunity for our local folks to start small businesses in concurrence with tourism. So yes, it's all a big ball of wax that goes toward the health of the community, the mental health, the physical health, and our economic health. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Valerie. That was great. Great minute or so. Who else would like to take a minute?
I'll go with Susan Logue. Thank you. I agree with Valerie and everyone else. Thank you so much. Historic downtown is so unique. So how do we increase that as a pedestrian-friendly environment? Inclusive, low, moderate income housing. We've got to go into this really as quickly as possible with the needs of our community. Everyone has different levels of their abilities, and it's really important that we look at that so that we keep as many people here as we can. And transportation is such a big issue. I wonder, could we ever get a train to Gilroy? That would be nice. So that's just my last thought. Thanks.
Thank you. Who else?
I'll go. Robin Pollard.
Please, Robin.
Yeah, the train would be ideal to see the walkability, the sidewalks and all of the developments and the older parts of town that weren't required to have sidewalks. So there's all this patchwork of dirt and then sidewalks and then dirt again to fill in those areas that that got overlooked or weren't required in the past, so that we do have a good walkable town. It's small enough that you can get around. Yeah, that would be what I'd like to see. That and trash free. How's that? Thank you.
Trash free, great, thank you. All right, who else?
This is Maureen Serafini, and I would really love to see the downtown be like the old hometown it used to be. I'd love to see that whole downtown area kind of closed off, making it walkability, just very, very easy for walkability. Restaurants, open air restaurants, a lot of businesses, kind of like Santana Row. I don't know if you know that, just that whole strip down there, to where it's safe, it's fun, it's a great place to gather.
Great, that's a wonderful vision, thank you. I think we have yet to hear from either of our two Kevins. We have Sarah, Ann, and Willis still. Do any of you want to take a minute to articulate a vision?
This is Sarah Steiner. Yeah. And I agree with everything that's been said, and I would love to see the Hollister plan focus on its place as a city. So there's infill. The development of the airport takes into consideration the productive use of agricultural land around it. We have the old leatherback paper recycling place on McCrae could be infilled. So the vision I would like to see of Hollister as a vibrant city that is contained, if a wonderful library community center that highlights Hollister, rather than reaching out into the county that is already the agriculture hub of the county, that it is the biggest employer. Those trucks on the road are moving food. There's so much infrastructure that's required to support agriculture. So we have to be very cognizant of the role that's provided by the county employers versus the city. If I'm not rambling, if I'm making sense, that Hollister becomes a vibrant but contained city.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so that I'm not sure we heard that as much from others so far. Those themes of both supporting agriculture and having a contained urban footprint are ones that are important for you, Sarah.
Yes, yes. So that we look at them as distinct factors. One other point I would like to make is that the state is mandating the building of homes. So that's going to happen. So the question I think the vision needs to address is how does that going to happen? And to my points, again, reiterating the need for housing that people in Hollister can afford and infill to keep it a tight community.
Great. Okay, thank you. All right. Is there anybody else who wants to speak at this point?
This is Kevin. I'll try and keep it to a minute.
Great.
Okay, I agree with everybody. I just wanted to tailgate a little bit on Diana with the senior part of it. I think we need a couple of senior communities. We've only got one, I believe. One that is really considered official, sort of. The housing, I agree, needs to be controlled, but not the way that it's planned on being controlled. I'm concerned about that. It's got to support the economic growth that we want to have. So we do have to grow, and I think what Sarah is saying is exactly right. We need to fill in what we have. We've got a lot of spots, and that can be filled in with things like apartments. Go up, go up and use that space, that sort of thing. Let's use the space that we have and not say no to everything that comes up. And there needs to be an education with this next election and things that are going to go on. We need to know exactly what's going to happen with these coming up. I'm not going to get into a speech on that. These things that are coming up in the measures. There is a growth initiative that we want to try and make sure that everybody understands what they're doing there, because we don't want to choke ourselves for the next 20 years either. We don't want to choke ourselves till 2040. So, and of course the airport. So I'll stop there.
Great, thank you. Any final closing words, closing visions from the few of you who haven't gotten to speak yet?
This is Willis Pack. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
somehow I've been getting muted and haven't gotten quite in. Following on, a concern of mine that involves a number of the elements in the last 2 or 3 discussions is that with the state pressure on housing development, B, the nature of the relationship between the county and the city, and C, the compatibility of the various zoning categories with agriculture. I was a 3rd-generation farmer in San Benito County, though most of my career then went in high tech. And I live on the farmland that my family has owned for quite a while. Houses and farms are very poor neighbors from the point of view of the farmer. Industrial and farming is generally reasonably compatible. So I mentioned this in a closed form earlier, but the relationship between the county and the city and their planning attitudes and these other elements are critical. I think infill is a very important factor and should be pursued strongly. But what I have seen historically, and what I see no reason to see diminishing, is a housing growth whack-a-mole, where sometimes it's the city, sometimes it's the county, and I've seen them both be negative and positive towards growth. So it goes wherever it occurs most easily, and with the state pressure, it's going to continue to occur. So anything in the vision statement that highlights the consistency or the effort to achieve unified policy between jurisdictions is a positive to me.
Yep.
Great, thank you. All right, is there anybody left who hasn't gotten to speak and would like to? All right, I think, you know, it's 11:36. We told you all we'd be done by 11:30, so I'd like to move us along. You know, we said at one point that we would have small groups report back, but of course we've had just the one group, so we don't need to do that on our agenda. But I can give a brief summary of the things I've heard. And I want to say I'm very impressed by the sophistication of the discussion that we've had today, the wide number of issues that we've covered, and the mostly unanimity and consensus on many of the issues. I think it's great to hear that already coming out even here in this first workshop. So the themes I heard, and not in any particular order, but that all seemed to come up quite a bit, were firstly jobs and economic growth, and particularly out at the airport and at the industrial park. Planning for some responsible housing growth, understanding that some growth management is needed, but also wanting to plan to fulfill state mandates, to plan for infill housing, and to plan for affordability for current residents, all being very important. A lot of emphasis on the downtown and maintaining it as a walkable, important centerpiece for the community, and a desire to see a complete transportation network that includes complete streets and sidewalks, walking and biking, better transit, and perhaps even someday a train with service out to Gilroy. There was quite a bit of talk about community facilities, particularly a community center, as well as Park Hill. And then there was talk about wanting to preserve agriculture around the city, needing to plan for the compatibility of urban and agricultural uses, wanting to see the city itself have a contained footprint, and wanting to coordinate growth and planning policies with the county. You know, it's a great list as we get started and thinking about themes and thinking about what our vision would be. This is the kind of a list that we can put together to work out into a vision statement and then serve as the basis for the update of the general plan. I know Carrie and others, someone on our staff has a slide with some future dates. I want to remind you that we do have, Carrie, is it at this point 2 or 3 upcoming workshops that we're doing?
We have 3 planned. If the last one doesn't get more attendees, we may consider canceling.
All right. And I think, though, I cannot see the screen, but I believe all 3 dates are on the slide. Is that right?
They are, and we went over them, and maybe Lindsay or Tarina, can you share your screen with the dates?
I don't have the PowerPoint up, but I will stop sharing my screen.
I can, yeah. I can
well, so the next week, I do have the date. So next, on Tuesday, June 30th, we have an evening meeting. On Wednesday, then we have the 4th of July weekend. On Wednesday, July 8th, there's a 7 a.m. meeting, which we already have quite good participation for. And then on Thursday, July 9th, we have an evening meeting, and that has had very few signups. So I'd encourage all of you to tell your friends to really focus on the meetings next Tuesday, the 30th, and the early morning on Wednesday, July 8th. We certainly will hold the meeting on Thursday, July 9th in the evening if we get more signups, but right now signups for that are pretty thin. There's not a need for any of you to come to these meetings. I hope you've had fun today. Maybe you've had so much fun you would want to come again, but we're really going to be doing exactly the same thing again. So there's not a need for you to do that unless it would be because you want to be as an observer or something like that. Once all these meetings have been held, there will also be a meeting of the General Plan Advisory Committee to digest all of this. After the 3 or 4 workshops, PlaceWorks will be writing up a draft vision statement that will be published in advance of the GPAC meeting, and then that will be discussed and we hope amended and approved by the GPAC at their meeting in August. And we're still working to set the date for that meeting, but it'll likely be in late August, sometime after the 18th or 20th, perhaps on the 20th, perhaps a little later than that. So, and we're still looking for that date. So that tells you about the next steps as I think you know going forward from there. Once we have the vision set and the GPAC has done that, we're going to be wrapping up our existing conditions and future trends work. and that will be published in the fall. And there will be another round of community workshops to talk about existing trends and start in on talking about the important issues that we need to address as more specific issues within the context of the general plan, and that'll be happening in the fall, sometime before Thanksgiving. With that, I guess I want to ask, are there any other either questions from the audience or comments from Placeworks staff? Otherwise, I might turn it back to either Abraham or Brian if they want to thank everybody and close the meeting.
I would like to thank you, David, for clarifying that who needs to participate and how often, and the fact that we could sign up just as keeping kind of track of what the mindset is going forward in other meetings. And so I think that that would be valuable. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be totally fine. I think those of you who did attend today, for instance, if we have small groups or as we do discussion, we won't necessarily call on you as much since you have gotten to speak today. But if you want to come as an observer, that will be fine.
Okay.
Anything else?
I just wanted to thank you for a well-run meeting. Appreciate it.
Very much.
Oh, good. I apologize for my internet. I've been sitting here on the phone and I keep looking to see if the internet came back, but it did not. So have to talk to the internet company about that. Brian or Abraham, do you want to add some closing words before we sign off?
Well, I think this was a very positive meeting with some great comments from the public. We'd like to thank the public for taking their time out of a Saturday for sharing your thoughts and ideas and visions. City staff, Placeworks staff, you guys were unbelievable today. And I look forward to more visioning meetings and more further attendance at the GPAC committees in the future, because this is the community's plan, whether you live in the city of Hollister or San Benito County or outside of the county, and you've got roots here. So the more involvement, the better. Thank you.
Yes, thank
Great.
you.
And with that,
Be here. Really appreciate it. Thank you for your participation, spending your part of your Saturday. Hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend, and thank you so much for all of your valuable comments and your valuable input. Really appreciate it. Thank you.